Do some comics that get trashed, really, are they suffering from the problem of just too many comics out there that do the exact same thing? This is kind of a problem that a lot of the indies have, where the indies just, they don't feel like indies. Independent means new, different. It shouldn't feel like the same kind of cloned title 50 times. But you see a lot of this, and I think those comics get knocked, and then people are upset. Why are you knocking indie comics? Well, because they're largely unoriginal. And shouldn't independent comics be very original? That's an interesting. See, it's like a Gordian knot we've got going on here. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. In terms of comics, I love comics that try different things. Many of the comics I've really enjoyed take very different approaches to kind of the sequential art, the storytelling, or they're covering a different topic, or they're doing different things. And I will forgive a ton of sins if the comic is different, if it's providing a new experience for me. I mean, I'm very open to overlooking problems with art, problems with story, problems with publishing, all these kinds of things if I'm being delivered something new. Conversely, though, if you're giving me kind of the same cloned thing over and over and over again, then I'm not interested in it. I then the little problems with the art or the story become more glaring. Remember back when Image first started, and you had kind of Extreme Studios, you had Youngblood, and then you had I'm not even going to remember all these. You had all these kind of cloned Youngblood titles that were coming out. None of them lasted very long, but they all started to feel like the same thing. And in fact, even though they were and still are amazing artists, if you took a look at kind of Youngblood and then Wildcats and then Cyberforce and then Wetworks, it's like, okay, well, we've got the sexy girl, and then we got the big hulking guy, and then we've got the more feral kind of Wolverine like one, and then you start to look, and you're like, there's a lot of similarity to these teams. Now, granted, the originals told their own unique stories. You did have a high profile, high caliber artist on it, but when you get like 20 of those going, it no longer feels like anything unique or entertaining is being done. And for a while, at least in the 90s, if you worked in a shop or you went to a shop, one of the reasons why you were pulled toward the indies is because between Marvel and DC, and to some extent Image, they were all kind of doing the same stuff. Not superhero books, but the same kind of superhero book. It's like everybody had pouches. Everybody had this kind of, it's like, hey, we're going extreme. We got our Wolverine, and we just, it all started to feel very much the same. And so it drove a lot of people to the indies to want to, let me find that horror book or that Western book or that, deconstructed hero book. A lot of what, this idea of kind of the deconstruction of a hero and kind of this darker look at kind of the entire comic industry, at least in the West, was largely as a reaction to the same kind of carbon, cookie cutter storytelling that was going on from the big two in their superhero books. And again, I just want to say it a second time. It wasn't so much cape books. People are like, oh, the cape books is played out. It's not. The problem were not superheroes. It was the same type of superhero story with the same type of team and the same type of conflict and the same type of villain, and just very, very thin, storytelling. But if we fast forward to today, 2020, you almost see more of this happening at the indie level than at the big two level, because now you have this idea of the slice of life book that is kind of this, this down to earth. Hey, we've got some characters and they're doing some, having some kind of little, teen angst adventure. And is this YA or is it not YA? I mean, people are in high school and they're got some, gender identity questions, and there's a relationship going on, and some kind of, slice of life kind of conflict. And now one of the parents is kind of rude, but then this other one is struggling because it's just, you can go down the line And there's a lot of books that are exactly this way now. It's in fact, slice of life has become the new 90s extreme in the year 2020. There's just a lot of it. And the funny part is, or I don't know if funny is the right word to use, but they're not selling because there's too many. There's a couple in there that are probably pretty good. Raina Telgemeier does this genre extremely well. But the solution is not for 50 other writers and artists to basically do Raina Telgemeier light or a clone of Smile. That is not the answer. I do think we're going to see it because there's always this lag where publishers, they go and they start reaching out and coming like, we're interested in certain projects, and it's like, oh, hey, Dogman is selling a lot of books. Holy cow, we need our Dogman. And then suddenly you see a flurry of cloned books, and then it blows up the market. Dogman is usually fine, just like Raina Telgemeier is going to be fine, just like Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri and to some extent Rob Liefeld all were fine. But the world around them craters because there's just people are like eventually going to nope out and just go out. I'll go back to the original. I'll go back to the source that started all this stuff off, and I'm not going to waste my time with the 50 or so knockoffs. Now, what's interesting about this is that right now in comic book, especially indie comic books, there's a lot of Kickstarters and Indiegogos and publishers that are commissioning this exact same book. On the day I'm recording this video, 3 separate people mailed me projects that are exactly the same. And they're like, hey, what do you think of this? Doesn't this seem repetitive? Yeah, it is repetitive. It's the same thing. They're not going to do well. They're not going to do well because it's, it just, there's nothing new here. And there's 50 other products of the exact same type competing for its attention. Note, in everything I just said, I'm not saying the quality is bad. It's quite likely that some of these books have a really passionate, great writer, good artist, nice people, wonderful, doing kind of their slice of life book. Quite likely. And some of these people on Twitter, and they have friends in the comic industry who's like, oh my God, you're so amazing. The project is so cool. It looks so wonderful. Yay. And it's like, that all that stuff can be true, and the project is still going to fail. The book is still going to be unsuccessful. Why? Because there's 50 of them on the shelf at the exact same time. That's something. It's like, this is business 101, not social politics, not ideology, none of that. It's pure economics, pure market planning. It's glut of content. It's and you see this stuff. By the way, you go to Japan, and they a lot of people say well, the manga is perfect. They know what they're doing over there. The same problem happens in Japan all the time. You get a popular book, and then there are 500 clones of that book, all pushed simultaneously. The difference is that I think Japan, at least the manga market, it's self-aware enough to know what it's doing, in meaning it knows it's doing that. It knows it's just shoving a bunch of cloned books out the door. And the consumption model in Japan is very different, where the price point is much lower, and people are coming in and they're buying this stuff, and it works out. It's they're not expected to make the same kind of money. Here in the U.S., though, there's a different, in Western, we have 2 problems. One, these things are expected to make more money. That's problem number 1. And problem number 2 is when they don't, or when they're unsuccessful, people get a chip on their shoulder, like they don't handle that rejection well. I've talked, personally, I've sat down, I've had many dinners with manga artists and creators who know that they're putting something out that is, kind of the 1/1000th title that is going to not get a lot of pickup, but they're either learning their trade, or they're trying, they've got a contract with this studio that they're working with, or any number of things. They understand the way this project is going to land, and they don't get pissed off about it. They don't get huffy about it. But in the U.S., in the Western, and by the way, same thing true with Europe. Europe not nearly to extent as the US and Japan, but Europe also does a number of kind of cloned projects. If something is successful, they batch on. But in Europe as well, there's not this feeling of, this project didn't sell, therefore, people must pay. In the West, there is that vibe going on of that you especially get of like a lot of bitterness creeps in. And the bitterness would not exist if people were just a little bit more self aware about the conditions and the market they were playing in. Like if you went into this and you knew that the book that you're putting out is competing with like 30 other books of exactly the same type, you might say to yourself, hey, I'm using this for practice. I'm gonna have something on my portfolio. I'm getting this out here, but I don't really expect to make a lot because, there's a lot of other people, there's a lot of noise in the channel. I'm not standing out. And that's understood. That's a gamble I'm taking. That's where it's at. Or maybe I'll delay the book for 5 or 6 months and hopefully find a more favorable market condition for my project. That's another option. But that doesn't happen. Instead, it is much more of a hostile. There must be somebody tanked my book. Somebody prevented me from being successful. And the answer is, yeah, some people did. The other 50 writers who put out the same product as you, they're the ones who prevented you from being successful because, you joined the club. So, I mean, I say all this from the standpoint of just, it's interesting to me because I see this pattern just play and play and replay over and over again. And it feels like a lot of projects that are maybe not bad are just being thrown out in the wind to die. And I see a lot of angst. And I think this is part of why you see especially on the indie side, the indie creator versus fan mentality come up, where, it's a war. The fans are clowning on a book. The indie creator's pissed because their book didn't do well. And the reality is, it's not the fans that were clowning on the book that are the problem. It's the fact that, where it landed in the market was terrible. That's, it just is what it is. I think if you are a writer, you've got to figure out a way for you to stand out. And standing out does not mean, you may think you have the most wonderful idea in the world. Cool. If you don't aim it properly, it's not going to stand out. If you've got 40 other people who also have a similar idea, it's not going to stand out. No offense. No, it's nothing against you. It just is what it is. But anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, throw a comment in here, follow me on social media, all that kind of stuff. Most importantly, I hope you're finding fun things to read, and thanks for listening.